Hi, this is Randy with Kion, and today I'm going to talk to you about our ServiceNow integration, application, and how to install it and configure it for connection into the Kion platform. First, you'll see that the Kion app is in the ServiceNow store. Within the store, you can search for Kion, you can Google Kion ServiceNow, and it will ultimately bring you to this page here to get more information about our integration. Within here, you can find a description of what this application is for, key features of this, any of our release notes as we continue to upgrade this, as well as all of your links and documentation to licensing requirements, platform installation guides, terms and conditions, contacts, as well as the ServiceNow requirements that are required for this. You'll also see that we have our installation guide here, which is what we're going to essentially walk through today, step by step. But if you prefer to follow along on your own, feel free to grab the installation and configuration guide from the application itself. To begin, we need to install the application. Doing so is as easy as just clicking the install button, choosing to install now, and going ahead and waiting for this progress to go through. This should take maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Once the installation is successful, we'll be able to see that the app has been successfully installed and view the details of it. Now we'll see that the application is installed, and we can actually search for it in our ServiceNow browser. Up here, I'm just going to go ahead and favorite this so we can come back to this at any time. But we'll see that we have a number of different areas that we can come into, from all the different information that is going to sync in, any of the open requests that are related to this, as well as our initial configuration with our Kion connectors and our general settings. To begin, we're going to click on our Kion connectors. Within our Kion connectors, this is essentially where we're making communication between our ServiceNow instance and our Kion application. To do so, we'll begin by creating a new connector. A connector will have information associated with it. So first, the name, right? So what do we want to call this? In my case, I'm going to call this my ITSM demo Kion application. Whether or not this is an active or deactivated connector, if it's the default, if you were to have multiple Kion instances, an indication if the test is healthy, an endpoint, a mid server, and a credential. The endpoint that we're going to select here is just simply the URL of your Kion environment. For me, in my demo environment, I'm just going to be using an itsmdemo.kion.io. You don't need any other, slash portal or any other particular path in here, just the overall URL of your Kion instance. Communication to Kion can happen in a number of different ways. First, you can have your ServiceNow reach out directly to Kion and have your security group open in Kion to accept that connection. Additionally, some folks will choose to use mid servers. For those that are familiar with mid servers, this is the ability for you to run infrastructure inside of your corporate network that would allow you to have a trusted endpoint within your Kion instance that would allow communication. If you use mid servers, feel free to reference this one here, select it from the list, and Kion will use the mid server connection for all communication to Kion. For those that are unfamiliar, you can enter into the Hi portal within ServiceNow, log in, go to your instance dashboard, and some of the options within your instances are to grab your IP information. This IP information of your instance is what will inform you of what to include inside of your security group for your application. Alternatively, you can use any of your networking tools, NSLookup or whatever that may be, to determine what the IP address of your ServiceNow environment is. And when you come over to the Kion side and Kion infrastructure, what we want to do is essentially edit the security groups to allow communication. Here we can see that we've added an inbound rule on 443 for the entire ServiceNow IP space. You can also limit this to just your instance or your mid server if you choose to go that route. The most important thing is that you make sure that it's on your user security group. You'll notice the description is allows inbound HTTP traffic. This is what allows ServiceNow and Kion to communicate. Once we have communication in place, we can set our endpoint. And next, what we want to do is add our credential. You'll notice that we give you the information here, but we're going to create a new basic auth credential in order to put a Kion API key in. For those that are unfamiliar, inside of your Kion instance, after you logged in, you'll be able to go to the top right, App API Keys, create an API key, call this whatever you'd like, ServiceNow integration, create that API key, and grab your token. From there, we can go back to ServiceNow, back to this credential, and we can go ahead and create a new basic app API key. So again, we're going to choose basic auth credentials, give this a name. So ITSM demo app API key in my case. We don't need to worry about a username. The password will be that token that you just received from Kion, and go ahead and submit that to save this. You'll notice that the important thing is that ServiceNow is going to automatically rotate out this API key every 24 hours for you so that you will be safe and secure. Once we have our endpoint in place and our credential in place, we can go ahead and submit this. You'll notice that by default, we are unhealthy as it makes its initial connection. If your security groups are incorrect or the mid server is down, this will stay unhealthy the entire time. But what we can do is we can click on the connector that we just created. You'll notice it actually went healthy, but we also have the ability to test the connector. When we test the connector, we'll see that we have a success. Connection appears to be authorized and validated. And another indicator will be that the last used timestamp on this API key should show that we just made our connection there, which we did. So going back to the Kion application now, we are now connected between ServiceNow and Kion. Congratulations. The next step is let's go ahead and continue down into our general settings of our application. Within our general settings, we have a number of different areas that we can configure. First, Kion also has the ability, when syncing, to leverage the account inventory within Kion to actually create configuration items in your CMDB within ServiceNow. If you desire to have this behavior, it's just as easy as selecting this checkbox and determining whether or not you want to customize the configuration field. When you do so, we actually give you the script that we're using and what we're mapping within the CMDB. If you prefer to make any changes, maybe you don't want to use the account name as the name in the CMDB, or you don't want to use the account number as your asset tag, feel free to modify this script as desired for whatever meets your purposes. If that's not required or not an ideal scenario for you, feel free to uncheck that box and Kion will not create CIs at that point. In addition to that, the majority of customers will not need to select this box. However, if you are using custom project permission schemes inside the application and want to ensure that when Kion creates projects, it leverages the appropriate permission scheme ID, you can also check this. The only real setting that you may determine to set inside of the general settings here is the data import schedule. By default, once this Kion connector is in place, a number of scheduled jobs will run on a daily basis to load all of the Kion data into your ServiceNow environment so that it can be leveraged in all of your workflows. By default, this is happening at 7 o'clock a.m., but you can add additional timestamps into this, maybe 9:30, maybe noon, however often you'd like to include this. And feel free to go ahead and update that data import schedule. Now we can see that ServiceNow is going to sync 3 times a day for this information from the Kion UI. Just to give you a little bit of a tour, within the Kion application, there are a number of these tables here. These tables represent all of the data that gets synced between Kion and your ServiceNow environment. Essentially, all Kion data is the single data table that stores all of this information, and each of these are filtered views based upon each of the entities here. So to see everything, all Kion data would be your best bet. And we can see that right now this is empty. This will soon populate when that scheduled job runs. If you prefer to speed things up, you can find a scheduled job or a scheduled data import like this one called Kion. We can execute now. All of these are linked together, and we'll pull through all of the rest of my scheduled imports that I need to get all of my data into Kion manually the first time. When I execute this, you'll also be able to see that when I come back to Kion, my last used timestamp should be updated to show that it is being run. When I come back to ServiceNow and come back into my application here, we should be able to see that it's starting to populate my data. Excellent, it is. Like I said, within here, this All Kion Data tab, you'll notice has a bunch of records associated with it, and there are different data types that are being brought in. Each of these, as I mentioned, will fall under the all Kion data, but I can begin to get filtered views of, say, active accounts versus OUs and projects that might be coming into my environment here. I can see all of that inside of Kion. I can see which cloud providers are enabled. And if you decide that you want to also have Kion create Azure subscriptions, when we come back to our general settings, we will see additional information here where the particular Azure billing source needs us to include our billing account and our enrollment account in order for this to be used by our service catalog item. Once you have your billing account and your enrollment account in place, you can leverage this inside of your catalog item or your service catalog, and we can actually take a look at what installs on the front end for customers to be able to use. I'm going to navigate over to the service portal side of ServiceNow. And within here, I'll be able to see that under my request, there's now a cloud account and a new project request form. This is the standard workflow that gets installed when you configure ServiceNow. Essentially, what this allows you to do is begin to leverage that information from Kion, where I can say, I want to create a new account or a new project. It's going to fall under engineering. You'll notice that there are different billing sources that become available. So these are tied to which cloud providers are also enabled. And again, all of this is syncing from your Kion environment, and we'll leverage this information when you go ahead and create the new account or this new project request. By default, the project cost centers are tied to the cost center table from within ServiceNow, but many folks will decide to use this against funding sources or some other Kion information in the future. This project owner, again, is tied to all of your users within ServiceNow, but you may map this differently as well. In our later video, we'll get into all of the back-end workflow that comes along with this. But for now, congratulations, you've configured the ServiceNow and Kion integration and are ready to use this in any way that you'd like from a workflow perspective.